Kevin Costner's marriage appeared to be ideal. 18 years, 3 lovely kids, and a huge Colorado ranch with Christine Baumgartner. However, all changed in February 2023. 2 months later, Christine filed for divorce after discovering something concealed in Kevin's vehicle. It wasn't the number of another woman. It wasn't receipts from gaming. Kevin had been concealing a secret for years, but it was something far worse. What she found in that car seat explains why she refused to defend her behavior in court and why she sought $248,000 in child support each month. Kevin Costner, the youngest of 3 sons, was born in Linwood, California, on January 18, 1955. That grief lingered in the home like a silent shadow, even though one of his brothers never lived past birth. William and Sharon, his parents, put in a lot of effort simply to keep the lights on. While Sharon worked as a charity worker, helping families, William worked as a wire handler and gradually worked his way up to a utilities position. Whenever William's job required it, the family continued to move, and money was always tight. Kevin had to walk through neighborhoods like Compton in the late 1950s and early 1960s, when actual fights and violent streets were commonplace. Bullies were aware of his little stature. He was only 5 feet 2 inches for the majority of his early teens. He never stayed long enough to establish roots since he felt like he had to start over every time he transferred schools. Despite having a mix of German, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and Cherokee ancestry and growing up in a devout Baptist household, he was primarily burdened by instability. He chose football and chorus because they provided a place to stand without sinking, and he slid down the hallways at Cababrio Middle School and later Villa Park High, feeling invisible. He witnessed the 1962 conquest of the West when he was 7 years old. And he felt a greater impact from those expansive realms than from anything in his own existence. In his dream, he would ride away from Compton and into a new life. On his street, he even witnessed actual fistfights that resembled movie sequences. He never said much about it, but those moments began to shape the serious roles he would play later. He still felt like he was attempting to catch up to everyone by the time he got to Villa Park High School. 5 feet 2 inches, timid, uncertain. He wrote little poems about feeling lost and kept them hidden while other children gained self-assurance. From Compton, he continued on to Orange County, Ventura, and finally Visalia. Never remaining in one place long enough to be considered a home. He marched in the band at Mount Whitney High, played baseball, and then returned to Villa Park, where he eventually received his diploma in 1973. Although he was never a particularly good student or athlete, he had a quiet perseverance, a combination of survival and inventiveness, that no one around him completely understood. He continued on to California State University, Fullerton, where he chose to major in marketing since it seemed secure. However, when he boarded a plane in 1975 and found himself sitting next to Richard Burton, his life was forever altered. Although Burton didn't say much, what he did say was significant. "I have something in me that can work on a screen," he informed Kevin. In Kevin's perspective, that one exchange opened a portal. Despite his lack of expertise, he joined a small theater club. After balancing classes and play rehearsals, he eventually earned his business degree in 1978. His first paid work was with Sizzle Beach USA in 1981, where he made $250 for weeks of filming, but acting had already taken over his mind. Even though he was hardly on screen, he was convinced that if he managed to live long enough, he could remain in Hollywood. In 1978, at the age of 23, he wed Cindy Silva, his college girlfriend. The first several years were difficult, but in 1984 their daughter Annie was born. Kevin took any small roles he could find because acting didn't pay the bills, such as a trucker in Night Shift in 1982. He assisted with sets, operated lighting, worked backstage, and did whatever else that generated revenue. Cindy took on more than she should have, and the money never went far enough. Kevin, however, never quit up. He gained experience from every minor position, and his resolve was strengthened by every rejection. Even after cutting his hair for an audition, he was rejected numerous times and ultimately lost the gig. However, he persisted. He played minor roles in films like Chasing Dreams, 1982, and Table for Five, 1983, adding subtle details that gave them a human feel through improvisation. His everyman demeanor, acting like someone you may know in real life, gradually caught on. Even in little parts, his honesty made him stand out. One of the most peculiar incidents in his early career then occurred. Long before the 1992 debut of The Bodyguard, he tried out for the film in 1983. Something went wrong during the drowning moment in the audition. Kevin had to jump in and pull an actress out for real as she started to sink under. It was nearly lethal. That day made him even more determined, but it also made him realize how risky the industry might be. He was determined to pursue the dream he had started, and he was not going to let anything scare him. After persevering through years of small parts and unsatisfactory auditions, he and his buddies founded a production company in 1985. Despite their lack of money, they were desperate for power. Making westerns like the ones he enjoyed as a child was Kevin's goal. He thought about the stories he will direct in the future late at night. While others gave up around him, his ambition and stubbornness kept him going. In 1987, everything changed. Kevin Costner took off like a rocket that year. Initially, there were The Untouchables. He portrayed Elliot Ness in the role of Al Capone against Robert De Niro. Additionally, Kevin received a $3 million payout directly from the $20 million budget of the movie. For someone who was still so new, it was unprecedented. The train explosion sequence, when multiple extras were burned, was particularly risky during the shoot. The lack of safety caused Kevin to lose his fury, and he almost left the project. However, everything changed when the movie earned $16 million globally. All of a sudden, everybody knew who Kevin Costner was. No Way Out debuted in theaters the same year. The thriller made $35.5 million in the US, or almost $102 million now, while costing $15 million to produce. The crowd was taken aback by the unexpected conclusion, which further cemented Kevin's position at the top. However, the shoot wasn't simple. Gene Hackman and Kevin had multiple arguments. The director had to intervene to settle their furious disputes in order to prevent a full-scale meltdown. After 2 consecutive big singles by the end of 1987, Kevin felt compelled to be taken seriously by Hollywood. Then, in 1988, Kevin played Crash Davis in Bull Durham. The film made $50.8 million while costing $8 million. The movie became a classic because of his charisma on screen, particularly when he was beside Susan Sarandon. Many of Kevin's well-known quotes, such as the well-known "I believe in the soul" speech, were improvised, which the public was unaware of. At last, he was demonstrating to the world what he was capable of when he followed his gut. Field of Dreams came out in 1989. Everyone thought it was weird to build a baseball pitch for ghosts. However, Kevin had faith in it. $15 million was spent on the film. However, the studio refused, so Kevin had to pay for reshoots out of his own pocket when the conclusion didn't work. The movie made just $531,346 when it first came out and was only shown in 22 theaters. However, word got out quickly. It quickly rose to $84 million globally. He became more than just a celebrity because of that movie. He became a representation of faith and hope as a result. He was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that same year. His face was all over, throngs cheered, and cameras flashed. At home, however, the spotlight was fading. His union with Cindy was collapsing. Together, they produced 3 children, but neither of them was able to prevent the negative effects of fame. Distance and adultery rumors proliferated. When their marriage dissolved in 1994, Cindy was given one of the biggest settlements at the time, reportedly for over $80 million. Kevin Costner seemed to be carrying the entire decade with him when he entered the 1990s. It all began in 1990 with Dances with Wolves, a movie he was so passionate about that he contributed $3 million of his personal funds to the $19 million budget. For risking his career on a 3-hour western about a lonely Union lieutenant developing a bond with the Lakota Sioux, he was referred to as mad. Still, he pushed forward. During the 5 months of filming, team hands stiffened in the wind and cameras were frozen by blizzards on chilly South Dakota plains. Sioux elders were employed by Costner to oversee every aspect, including ceremonies and language. When the film came out, it was clear how much attention had gone into it. In 1991, it received 12 Oscar nominations and took home 7 of them. Costner became the second person after Orson Welles to win both Best Picture and Best Director for a first-time production. The film altered Hollywood's perception of Aboriginal stories and earned $424 million globally. Additionally, it transformed Costner's life by establishing him as the man who could accomplish anything. Others were swept along with him by that growing tsunami. Prior to the film, most people were still unfamiliar with Graham Greene, who portrayed Kicking Bird. Greene received his chance because Costner was looking for authentic native actors. He was nominated for an Oscar for his performance, but the path there wasn't easy. On set, a real buffalo stampede went awry, injuring team workers. Filming was nearly halted by the turmoil, which also further depleted an already tight budget. Costner declined to employ effects or trickery. He wanted actual buffalo when a moment called for it. With few supplies and frigid temperatures, the crew waited for the storms to pass and the animals to settle down. Greene persisted, and his career took off when the movie became a global sensation. Following that, Costner immediately entered the role of Robin Hood in 1991. The $48 million sword fight scene near the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves turned into a massive action movie. Costner was so committed to his archery training that, during a scene, an arrow flew off mark and struck a staff member, injuring them and stopping production. The film made almost $390 million worldwide despite the accident and the negative critiques he received for his English accent. Costner solidified his position as Hollywood's leading man at the time, while Alan Rickman grabbed scenes as Nottingham's sheriff. Then, in 1991, he was cast in JFK, a role that required greater passion than anything he had ever done. As Costner broke down the Zapruder footage in a 15-minute courtroom soliloquy, Oliver Stone allowed the camera to roll. One of the movie anchors was that speech. Because it combined established facts with conjecture regarding the Kennedy assassination, the film sparked debate. It was lambasted by critics. Despite the dispute among historians, crowds continued to flock. It received 8 Oscar nominations and $25 million. People were drawn into ancient questions with fresh vitality by Costner's portrayal. He made a decision on this high that took everyone by surprise. In 1990, he declined Pretty Woman. He declined and instead concentrated on Dancing with Wolves since he believed the romantic comedy would portray him in an unfavorable light. His path was shaped by that decision. His confidence was bolstered by his success, but it also fueled conflicts with studios. He started to insist on final cuts and rewrites in order to gain more control. His ties with producers, who had previously struggled to collaborate with him, were strained by the power disputes. Nevertheless, he continued to land roles, gain momentum, and push himself to the limit. Few actors ever reach Costner's peak by the end of 1992. On November 25, 1992, The Bodyguard debuted in 117 theaters and earned $16.6 million during its first weekend of release. It increased to $401 million globally and $121.9 million in North America. Over 18 million copies of the soundtrack were sold, making it a phenomenon. Costner remained committed to the menacing choreography and physical training that molded his role despite the rumors that circulated about him and Whitney Houston. After receiving 2 Oscar nominations for Best Original Song, the movie cemented its position as the world's most popular movie. A Perfect World followed. In 1993, Costner gave one of his most poignant performances as an escaped prisoner who develops a bond with a kidnapped boy. Despite their mutual regard, there were conflicts beneath Clint Eastwood's direction. Costner put a lot of pressure on Eastwood to write the script with more depth. Due to delays, doubles were used in some situations. Costner received a Golden Globe nomination for the film, which brought in $104 million worldwide. It developed into a revered cult classic over time. In 1994, Wyatt Earp arrived. It was Costner's passion project worth $72 million. He demanded actual gun choreography, real locales, and a real mustache. In certain moments, the Dodge City shootouts lasted more than 10 minutes. 3 hours into the film's runtime, critics moaned. A $25 million loss resulted from audiences' struggles as well. Costner even attempted to obstruct the production of the competing movie Tombstone behind the scenes. Hollywood muttered about ego after noticing the rivalry. Although it signaled the start of a decline at the time, the film gained praise for its ambition years later. Tension even came from The Bodyguard. Costner and Whitney Houston had disagreements about duets and rewrites. Houston and the studio were irritated by Costner's modifications because, in his dual roles as producer and actor, he felt the script needed more intense tension. They overcame their annoyances to produce situations that are still memorable today. However, the arguments gave his reputation as a fierce control fighter yet another dimension. Things at home became heavy. By 1994, his wife Cindy and his 3 kids, Joe, Annie, and Lily, were living in a mansion in Orange County. On the exterior, it appeared flawless. The strain inside was steady. Costner frequently put in close to 100 hours a week, alternating between late-night editing sessions, meetings, and sets. Cindy found it difficult to deal with his absences and the idea that his work took precedence over their family life. They were forced farther apart by the pressure, creating fissures that would eventually enlarge. Critics were whispering about overexposure by now. He felt inevitable after making 3 big pictures in quick succession. No one anticipated that Waterworld, his next directing endeavor, would come to represent Hollywood excess. Costner nevertheless continued to pursue lofty goals. He was determined to pursue his goals regardless of whether they would succeed or fail. The pivotal moment arrived with Waterworld in 1995. Hurricanes destroyed sets in Hawaii, causing the $100 million movie to become a $175 million production. The entire cost, including marketing, was $230 million. At the time, it was the priciest film ever produced. Piece by piece, a huge floating ATL weighing over 1,000 tons had to be airlifted in. Costner made $250,000 a day, which led to rumors of sabotage and envy. He and director Kevin Reynolds got into such heated arguments that Reynolds left the film. Waterworld earned $264 million globally, but the industry derided it as Kevin's Gate since expenses ate up the revenues. Costner was worn out and bridges were destroyed by the stress. The Postman followed in 1997. He starred in the $80 million movie and served as its director and producer. It debuted on Christmas Day, just as the Titanic was packing every theater. Just $17.6 million were made by The Postman in the US, compared to $27 million globally. It was ripped up by reviews. Its 177-minute duration turned off viewers. Costner's decline since Wolves was evident in its box office failure. Tabloids grabbed on another subject in the midst of this collapse. Costner briefly dated actress Bridget Rooney. Shortly after his divorce from Cindy was finalized, in November 1996, she gave birth to their daughter, Liam. Headlines were driven by the age difference, the timing, and the secrecy. Only after a DNA test verified paternity in 2002 did Costner recognize the child. Eventually, he established a trust fund, although he largely avoided contact. His reputation was further tarnished by the affair. Studios retreated after Waterworld and The Postman. He was passed over for opportunities, such as Air Force One, which the producers gave to Harrison Ford. Costner took a break from acting for a spell, focused on environmental and polo issues, and patiently waited for the industry's ire to subside. In 1996, he made a comeback with lesser films like Tin Cup, and in 2000, he gradually restored respect with films like 13 Days. It would take years for him to fully recover, first with Hidden Figures in 2016 and then with Yellowstone's contemporary success. 13 Days in 2000 allowed him to display a different side. He performed during the Cuban Missile Crisis as Kenny O'Donnell. To portray the tone of Kennedy's inner group, Costner examined genuine audio recordings and used actual White House transcripts from ex-COM meetings. Globally, the film earned $66 million. Though not enormous, he was powerful enough to regain faith in his theatrical skills. In 2003, he returned to the camera with Open Range. He filmed on the Stoney Indian Reservation in Canada with Robert Duvall. The group was thundered past by real cattle stampedes. Every day on set was shaped by mud, storms, and erratic weather. Genuine horses, genuine dust, and real grit were what Costner demanded. Due of its emotional honesty, the the film became a favorite among Western enthusiasts and made $58 million. He switched to something lighter with The Upside of Anger, which came out 2 years later. He portrayed a retired baseball player who becomes a radio host in 2005 and develops feelings for Joan Allen's character. Both performances were well received by critics, yet no audiences showed up. On a $12 million budget, it earned $28.2 million globally. Nevertheless, Costner was able to shift towards more character-driven work thanks to the part. As Hollywood evolved, he had another well-liked role as Jonathan Kent in the 2013 film Man of Steel. One of the film's emotional pillars was Costner's tornado sacrifice sequence, which brought in $668 million. He created a genuine and grounded father-son bond by drawing on his personal experiences with ranch life. At about the same time, he was struck with an odd legal dispute. Costner was sued by Stephen Baldwin in 2012 for allegedly defrauding him of $13 million in a commercial transaction involving oil spill cleaning equipment developed following the Deepwater Horizon accident in 2010. The publicity damaged Costner's reputation as a businessman, but the case continued until a jury dismissed Baldwin's claim. After a brief breakup the previous year, he married Christine Baumgartner in 2004, leading a more sedate existence by 2013. In order to balance Costner's job with time on their ranch, they had 2 sons, Caden, born in 2007, and Hayes, born in 2009. Kevin Costner's appearance in Batman v Superman lasted under 2 minutes. However, the weight of a lifetime was carried by those 2 minutes. Long before Capes and Rescuing the World, he appeared as Jonathan Kent, the calm father who influenced Superman's moral compass. The sequence was shot on September 1, 2015, in Louisiana. Completed in a single day, but long after the credits had rolled, listeners could still hear the serenity in Costner's voice. While Ben Affleck's Batman stood in the same universe with a darker heart, it seemed as though he whispered the movie's message into Clark's psyche. Fans continued to discuss the brief father-son scene as though it were a secret truth concealed in a massive blockbuster even after the film's March 23, 2016, release, which brought in $874 million worldwide. It was hailed by critics as one of the most poignant passages in a superhero movie. Additionally, Costner stated in interviews that he was taken aback by the profound impact a little moment could have. In order to maintain the emotional impact, the studios kept the scene short. And the story's overall tone was influenced by that subdued decision. When Hatfields and McCoys debuted on television in 2012, Kevin Costner was once again the talk of the town. As Devil Lance Hatfield and millions of people watched every move, the series placed him into muddy mountains and never-ending shooting. At the time, it was the most-watched scripted show on adult-supported cable, with 13.9 million viewers for the first episode and 14.3 million by the finale. Even though Costner was 57 at the time, he continued to perform the majority of his own stunts, such as lengthy, violent combat scenes that required him to spend up to 12 hours a day in the mud. NBC received roughly $8 million in commercial revenue, while the production cost $20 million. The true reward, however, was when it won 4 Emmys, including one for Costner's main role. Cast members chuckled behind the scenes about slipping into mud pools in between takes. However, Costner subsequently acknowledged that there was a significant physical cost. But for him and the History Channel, which had never seen anything like it, the prizes and the crowds made every tired moment worthwhile. Beginning in 2018, Yellowstone completely changed Costner's life and made him the face of contemporary Western narrative. At the age of 68, he performed his own horseback riding scenes while carrying John Dutton throughout Montana's boundless vistas for 5 seasons. His pay increased to $1.3 million per episode as the show took off, bringing his total earnings for season 5 to $18.2 million. Then everything broke down. He requested $12 million for the second half of season 5 in 2023, but the studio resisted with ideas for pay cuts and creative disputes. Tension increased until Costner threatened to file a lawsuit if the agreement was not upheld. This massive show abruptly broke in the middle of its success as production slowed and the conclusion was postponed. Costner's pay has grown to be a major negotiating factor due to the $15 million budget per episode. Fans were shocked when the contract expired in 2024. Trade publications verified every figure and detail of the behind-the-scenes dispute, making his departure one of the decade's most significant television splits. Then came Horizon, the fantasy he had carried about since 1988. The version he believed in was not wanted by any studio. Not even when they made offers that fell roughly $5 million shy of his requirements. So he took the unimaginable action. To assist in the construction of a $100 million, four-part epic, he mortgaged his land and took $38 million out of his own pocket. On May 19, 2024, the first chapter debuted at Cannes, and he carried all the danger. Disappointment was severe when the domestic box office started with just $12 million. Although some reviewers appreciated the film's emotional sweep, others claimed it had ambition but dragged at times. The first two chapters were published by Warner Brothers, but the final two are still unfunded. The ghost that usually stalks Costner, Waterworld, was likened to this moment. However, he is adamant that Horizon will go on. He promises to finish what he began, even if he has to carry it alone. Everything became more complicated in 2025 when stunt double Devon Labella sued Costner and his firm for allegedly pushing her into an unscripted attack scene on May 2, 2023, while filming Horizon Chapter 2. No intimacy coordinator was present, she claimed. No notice, and that she felt helpless and humiliated. Costner's team refuted all of the allegations, describing them as personal and untrue. In October 2025, the courts permitted the action to proceed without dismissal. Labella was not rehired after the union later verified that safety regulations had been violated. The set of Horizon became a battlefield of claims and denials as news outlets chased every detail. Labella requested safety changes and a public apology, and the case is still pending in court. Costner has always had an equally spectacular personal life. In 1978, he wed Cindy Silva, and the two of them raised 3 children together for 16 years, Annie in 1984, Lily in 1986, and Joe in 1988. Before rumors of an affair rocked their marriage in 1994, it appeared stable. Even more explosive was what followed. Bridget Rooney claimed that Costner was the father of her child Liam in 1996. The DNA test proved it, even though Costner initially denied it. He had kept Liam a secret from Cindy until the test results were in, and the disclosure sparked a legal frenzy. In order to avoid a protracted legal battle and the public revelation of his once quiet family image, he reportedly paid a $15 million settlement. He met Christine Baumgartner at a charity function in 1998, and they briefly parted ways in 2002 since he already had 4 children and she desired children. On his estate in Aspen, they got back together and got married in 2004. Hayden, Hayes, and Grace were their other 3 children, born in 2007 and 2009, respectively. With polo matches and ranch get-togethers, their existence appeared tranquil from the outside. However, the protracted shoots for Yellowstone caused intense strain behind closed doors. Later court records disclosed therapy sessions and emotional detachment that money could not resolve. Despite having a net worth of almost $145 million, their disagreements continued to worsen. Fans were only aware of 5 of Costner's 7 children for years. Born in 1996, Liam was kept a secret until the results of the DNA test made the truth public. In the 1990s, there were also rumors of a brief relationship with Naomi Arian. He also kept a long-term secret about another situation. As his reputation increased, he managed to hide portions of his home life until courts and paperwork pushed them into the open. These stories demonstrated how complicated celebrity families can be. When privacy collides with legal reality, the same wealth that looked like a shield later exposed every corner of his life. During his divorce, Baumgartner's handbag collection valued at over $100,000 appeared in legal filings. Reports included opulent residences, ranch costs, and everything they had bought together. Baumgartner maintained that her spending was excessive and that he was not making an equitable contribution. Court filings that displayed their purchases turned the divorce into a public spectacle. It served as a reminder that once a marriage fails, even wealthy families can disintegrate in agonizing ways. After 18 years of marriage, Baumgartner filed for divorce on May 1, 2023, citing April 11 as the date of their separation, which caused a public uproar. What astonished everyone was the finding that she had acquired a Porsche Cayenne worth more than $100,000 in February 2023 using joint funds. This was the first indication, according to Costner's team, that she was getting ready for the divorce. She wouldn't say why she purchased it. And the moment the filing hit the court, news outlets began digging into every detail. Suddenly, even the simplest financial move appeared to be a component of a larger scheme. It made a personal tragedy into a national story. All of this became even more well known as a result of the child support dispute. Costner offered $63.29 monthly, but Baumgartner requested $248,000. The judge accepted Costner's offer following a two-day hearing in September 2023, basing the ruling on their financial situation and the children's needs. The arguments centered on the prenuptial agreement. While Costner's attorneys attempted to contest its fairness, Baumgartner used it to retain some assets. The divorce was formally finalized in February 2024 after they reached a comprehensive settlement in September 2023. There were more financial twists to come. According to court documents, Baumgartner charged $25,000 in legal fees on a pooled card and accepted $90,000 in cash advances. Costner said that she intentionally depleted joint accounts. Baumgartner denied this. However, the judge mandated that she pay back $14.37 of his legal fees. Every statistic was made into a headline by the tabloids. Costner briefly dated singer Jewel in late 2023 when everything had calmed down. Additionally, in January 2025, Baumgartner accepted a proposition from financier Josh Connor. Near a private moment on a beach near Santa Barbara, Costner informed reporters that he had no intention of getting married again. Rather, he concentrated on his kids and starting over. Reporters observed how the concepts of horizon, in which characters continue to go forward even after everything around them falls apart, were reflected in this intimate chapter.